Hello, Dave. Hi, Mackenzie.
Hello.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Vicky.
Hey, I'm gonna go back on mute because my dogs like to join in.
That's right.
How's your baby?
Lou's doing great. She's sleeping through the night and gaining weight. She's right down the center of the growth curve. Everything's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, sleeping through the night is amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a gift.
Definitely.
Yeah. Hi, Vida.
Hey, can I ask you a art space question before everybody gets on?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so a friend of mine who's a writer, and all she has is basically Social Security income, about $1,100 a month. She's been applying, and they want $800 a month rent. Does that sound right?
Sounds about right.
Okay, I thought it was like 30% of what you had.
I think the units are 50 and 60% area median income. I don't know. I think they lost their 30% units
Okay.
due to problems with HUD.
Okay. All right. So I that's good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Let me go back on mute in case the dogs start barking.
Okay.
Hiya, Beth. We have a puppy in the room.
It sounds like we do.
Yeah.
Dave, is that you, puppy?
Or Mark, is that you?
That's not my puppy.
I think it might be Dave Stacks.
Yeah. No, mine are quiet so far.
Is my puppy bothering people?
No.
It's cute. Oh, all right.
Aw,
There's the one that's making the noise.
I got this one.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
Here's the one that's not making the noise.
Oh.
Oh,
Hey, Beth, congratulations on retirement.
Oh, well, thank you.
When does it start?
August 31st is my last day of work, so I guess it would be September 1st.
All right. So do you have plans to like escape town for a few weeks to relax?
Yes. I'm planning a big trip to the east and northeast. Gonna go to Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, and then hit New Hampshire to see some leaves. So
Cool. Well, please keep us posted as with pictures and how you're doing.
okay.
We're unforgettable.
That's right.
So I'm named iPad on here, by the way.
Mm.
Want me to rename you, Vicky?
Yes, please.
Let me see if I can do it.
Are you the tech guy in this crew, David?
Hi, Andrea.
I'd say
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
I'd say we're in trouble if I'm the tech guy.
Better you than me.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I did it. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It says Vicky, but no picture.
No, I don't have the video going because I'm on either my phone or my iPad, and the angle is really odd.
Okay.
I think what Vita means to say is we miss you.
Thanks, David. Very diplomatically put. Hi, Jerry. Where are you these days?
I am sitting at our cabin in the Northwoods of Wisconsin,
Hey.
looking at a lake.
Nice.
This is a piece of street art behind me from Cuba that Ellen got about 15 years ago.
Nice.
Cool.
So I got 13 people to accept the invite, and then 5 maybes.
I'm just counting to make sure we've got a quorum. One, two, three, 4. People keep popping around. Hi, Naomi. 5. We need 8. Can you, the pictures keep on popping around for me. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Laura's 7. Fred is 8. Actually, no, Fred is an alternate.
Yeah.
So we're missing 1 still to have a full quorum yet.
I'm here, Vita. This is my first time, but I think I can contribute to the number.
Good. I counted you.
Oh, then never mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 8 now. Go ahead. We got quorum.
So Vita, who's got the agenda for the meeting?
Uh-oh. I forgot to print it. But I know that the first thing we want to do is wish Beth well. She's going to be retiring, and she's put up with us, what, 3 years now? How many years, Beth?
Longer than that.
Longer than that? I don't know.
It's about 15, actually.
No.
Yes.
We started with Tom Layton. Then we went to Daryl Washington. Then, was that you after that?
Mhm.
Holy moly. Well, aren't you glad that you're leaving us? 15 years is a long, long time to be serving.
Well, I just
Well,
want to say how grateful I am for all of your work, Beth.
Yes.
You've been the glue for a lot of development in the Valley, and you've done a really nice job of tying the pieces together for a lot of people that sometimes are feuding with each other, and have found a way to be diplomatic and in the middle. without seeming to really bother anybody. It's a very specific skill that you have, and I've appreciated it immensely. So thank you for your work.
And thank you also for all the information that you bring us in enough time for us to be able to either talk about it, react to it, take a position on it, or whatever. And for that, we thank you very much. The list of our accomplishments is pretty large. So there we go.
Well, thank you very much.
You're going to come back and visit though, right?
Absolutely. And I love grand openings. I'm happy to
I've got a couple
come
sketches.
back to celebrate anything in the valley.
Good.
Have you been to see Naomi's buildings yet? Anybody? Art Space?
There was a party there today, wasn't there?
Oh, you went, Fred. How was it? I haven't left the house yet. What was it?
It was great to see it. I do much better by seeing it than examining,
Paper?
plans and so on. If you haven't seen it, you should. There's 2 more dates coming up scheduled, the 4th and the 23rd of August, I think it is.
So
it
just
was in an email.
to fill in the context here for those playing at home that don't know what Naomi's building is, that's Art Space's Northside Artist Lofts that is open 3 weeks ago or something, and has tenants already living in the building and many about to move in.
Yeah, and it was great to see Fred there, and we had 3 other community members attend, but I don't know where it's on the agenda, but I'm certainly prepared to give an update. It is an art space project. We're a nonprofit based in Minneapolis, so definitely not my building. Big team.
But you work for that organization, so.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull up the
If
agenda.
somebody,
Here we go.
oh, you have it? Okay, great.
I think I have it. No, I haven't got it yet. That was just somebody saying thank you.
If anybody has the agenda, if they can send it to my email, I can pull it up and I can share it with the group here.
Well, I know Laura had a couple of issues that she wanted. Laura?
Hello.
Hello. Can you comment on the 2 issues that you wanted raised?
Okay, so at the HNA meeting on Monday, the 14th or whatever date it was, Nicole just made a passing about the Carl Eller building that's being called the Curry building or Curry something. And I was just curious if I could get more information on that, like, has it passed? How did I not know anything about that building other than knowing that it was somewhere in the works? She made it sound like it had passed everything, and I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it might, so I'm guessing Nicole, I think, is on, but she had to step away for a second. She might have been commenting. So for everybody on the call here, the Curry Commons building that Laura's referencing is a project that Wellington Management is developing. And Carl Eller used to own the property. So I'm going to, oops, I do not want to go to FaceTime. I'm going to share my screen here. So this is looking east into downtown. Cedar Lake Road is right here on the left, kind of effectively right under where the camera is. The Curry Commons project is on the land that Carl Eller previously owned, the 73,000 square feet immediately adjacent to Pioneer Paper that's on the south side.
David, you keep on referring to it as previously owned. Do you own it now? Does Wellington own it now?
So we set up a new ownership partnership between us and Carl Eller.
Okay.
So my dad, Steve, and me and Carl all own this land together.
All right.
And we are in a partnership to develop this. And Steve, my dad, and I will be sponsors for the development of a 187 unit affordable housing project on this site. So
townhouses, apartments, how many levels up and down?
Yeah. So this, can you guys see the screen okay?
Yep.
So this is the project renderings. We went through Planning Commission
Kidding me?
last year, I want to say last spring on this. And it was approved. So Laura, that's maybe what you heard as an update. So this is an affordable housing project. It's what's colloquially referred to as a 4% bond deal. So it's a tax credit project with a bunch of different sources of gap financing that need to we need to accrue for the project to be able to close, finance, and start construction. And that usually takes like 3 or 4 years to be able to get all of those different sources of dollars to be able to get driven into a project like this of this scale. And this is a large tax credit project relative to others that are going through that process right now alongside us. So this is it's a 4-story project over effectively 2 levels of parking. One's at grade and then one's a parking deck. And this is on the entire block effectively that Carl Eller previously owned. And so this aerial right here is looking southeast. So you have Art Spaces project right here that Naomi was just referring to in the foreground, and then the Leaf office building that we own and manage on the south side of that block, and then our office building, the Leaf South project that we have permitted but have not decided to start construction on. And then this is the housing project that is called Curry Commons that we're referring to. So you can see it's almost the entire site of that 72,000 square foot block.
Is that a garden in the middle there with building on 3 sides?
Yeah, there's like a roof deck that is above the parking structure. And then,
Okay.
and that's kind of at level 3 effectively of the housing. And then to the east of that, there is kind of a large stormwater rain garden that is planned as a part of the floodplain mitigation that we need to do because this site is deep in the floodplain.
Okay.
Can I ask, well, this map is up, and I feel stupid for not knowing, but where are the homeless encampments right now?
They're on this site right here where can you guys see my mouse?
Yeah.
Where the parking lot is showing right here.
Okay.
So David, what size units, is this gonna be for families or singles or, extended families? How do you see the units being? Oh, there we go.
This is not the right thing. Hold on. I gotta pull up a different thing. We have, well, I won't be able to reference it because I don't know exactly. Just a second. We have there are 3 bedroom units in the project. I thought I had that.
How many?
There we go.
Lots.
Can you see this?
Oh, I see. Okay.
There we go. This is what I wanted to show. There are 28 3-bedroom units in the project, 32 2-bedroom units, 116 1-bedrooms, and then 11 studios. And then this is the range of affordability that we have planned for each of those units.
That's really nice that you've got 45 at 30%.
I have to say, I'm just impressed with the numbers also, that in this day and age that you can do that and find financing. I'm just amazed at how many units you've managed to bring in below 60%.
Yeah.
Well, we have a good team.
Yeah,
Are you patting yourself on your back, David?
I'm excited. I'm really excited about this project. I think it
looks good. It really looks good.
Yeah, it's a huge win for that site. I have a feeling people are going to ask about the money, and that's a good question. So this is kind of roughly how we are looking at the current sources and uses or the financing of this project. So we've applied for and secured quite a bit of dollars already. So I think 3 or so million of different sources of public funds that we would need to drive into this. And then, the tax credit equity and the first mortgage, those are effectively commitments that we have from lending institutions and tax credit syndicators that we work with on these types of projects. So there's kind of missing we have about 3 million that's outstanding beyond the TIF that we need to be able to drive into this project. And that's through what we think is the MHFA. And then we're hoping that the city will be able to fund another round of trust fund dollars for this project.
Laura, when Carl Eller bought this property, and I can't even remember how many years ago, it always has been envisioned to be, he always wanted to put affordable housing units on his land. And he has really sort of like, rather than selling it off to whoever had approached him, he's been very committed to sticking with the land and sticking with his vision. So we haven't talked about it for some time, but this, what's being presented is have been sort of the dream and the vision from the time that Carl Eller bought this property.
Yeah, he's certainly communicated that to me several times. I've got to know him pretty well through this. And he's very committed to the north side. He lives on the north side, not far from this location, and has for a long period of time, and really wants to see this as a catalytic investment long term. And he also, I think, is interested in having his legacy be a part of this building in perpetuity as well.
ROC had the state come in and clean up the site. You had indicated that there's a lot more contamination still remaining.
That's right.
How much is that going to cost, and how much will it delay you in moving forward, or in getting the last bits of funds that you need to get this going?
Well, we actually have a lot of, as you can see from this, we have a lot of the cleanup grants already secured for this site. This project checks a lot of the boxes for the grantors that fund brownfield remediation. It was cleaned up through an MPCA action that reached back to the previous responsible parties, including the railroad in 2000, I think the early to mid 2000s. It was an old oil refinery site, for those that don't know the history here. And so it was a really toxic site that persisted for several decades until it was cleaned up. And what we found through investigations after we acquired the property from Carl's single ownership and into that joint ownership was that the way that they cleaned it up in the early 2000s was effectively to take out like 4 to 6 feet of contaminated fill, the top soil, and then take that off to a contaminated landfill, and then bring back in 4 feet of clean fill. What's happened in the interim is that the smear zone, which is quite honestly a technical term that I've learned, has moved because the water table has kind of fluctuated over time and has brought the contaminants up into that previously clean soil that was brought in after the remediation action. And so that previously clean soil has now been contaminated by the contamination that was previously further down in the site. And so what we have to do is remove that now contaminated soil and then cap it, and not have any human element within 4 feet of that contamination ever. And that's the plan, and that's what we'll do.
Do you then cap the ground?
Yeah, we'll cap it with concrete and asphalt, so people won't be digging in our driveways effectively. And then we have gardens. Or no gardens, and they won't be digging in our rain gardens either. And those rain gardens will not be able to infiltrate into the ground, because that would mean that they would be picking up contamination and bringing it into the creek. And so it presents a lot of challenges, but there are things that are not things we can't design around and people don't have experience with.
Okay. When do you hope to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to, if you want, point out about the developer, deferred developer fee, and 1 and 2, just the issue of the complexity of the design, who the engineers are that to do all that work to prevent that flow back into the ground.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's the team that we've worked with a lot over the last several years in the Valley. So it's Wank is the engineering team that's doing the environmental and civil work for us, and then Collage Architects is the designer on the architectural side. We have longstanding relationships with both those organizations and the professionals that work on those teams. And they've got quite a bit of familiarity from LEAF, and then from LEAF South, and from their work with the Townhome project and helping out on the Art Space project as well. So that there's a lot of familiarity with regard to the challenges that the soils and the contamination in the groundwater and the floodplain present, which is why we're kind of keeping that same team intact for this, because there's a high degree of difficulty for sure.
So go back to the deferred developer fee, because that also says you're going to be holding on to this for a while. Right?
Yeah, we will. We as an organization, and my family, and both my parents and myself are very invested in affordable housing. We've got a long history of that through both nonprofit. Beacon Interfaith is a nonprofit that my dad started in the mid-90s that is a well-known affordable housing owner and developer in town. And then also more recently, we as an organization, Wellington Management, have defined an affordable housing division within the company that has a plan to continue to grow investment in affordable housing in town exclusively. And so this is yet another project that we have in our pipeline of affordable housing that we plan to deliver to the Twin Cities market. And the intent and the ownership structure is to hold long-term. And we've recently hired folks on the residential management side to run our housing. So we're not only building and developing and owning long-term, but also managing it in-house as well. And so we'll be doing that for all of our housing projects going forward.
When do you hope to cut ground?
If all goes well, we're hoping to break ground in the spring of 2022. So 8 or 9 months.
And then finishing?
It's a longer build, like 20 months. And so it's probably late summer of 2023 or fall of 2023.
Do you need any more support from us?
Yeah.
In what shape? Letter?
Just a letter of support would be wonderful.
To CPED or to the city council?
Or to one of your funders.
Probably to CPED as that probably makes the most sense, because then we can use that for other funders as well. If the group wants to do that, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll try and get one out.
So, but I want to come back to Laura, because it seemed like she kind of felt like she was jumped by this. And so I just want to make sure your questions and concerns, you've raised them, and that if you have any follow-ups, so you feel like you've got space to follow up on it.
I would just really appreciate if you'd send me all this paperwork. Like, I want the breakdown on
Sure.
percentages. I kind of like to see all this stuff. I mean, I heard about this and then I didn't hear anything else about it. And I was surprised that I'm kind of on the finger on the pulse about what's going on around here. And this totally got by me. So I just want to know what's going on.
I assure you that I wasn't trying to slip one by you, Laura.
Oh, I not accusing you of that.
We did go through the public process of permitting for this, and it was lengthy. There were a few revisions to the plans that were a little aggravating, shall we say. But we got through it, and we've submitted. I mean, I think we're on like round 3 of. So we've been submitting applications for grants on this since 2019. So this isn't brand new. by any means. And I do have records or a folder that I have on my desktop of me presenting this almost the identical slide deck to the ROC in January of this year. So I'm pretty sure this is not, I didn't share all of the information, but this rendering package I did have from a previous ROC presentation.
So, oh crap, now I forgot what I was gonna ask. Oh well. You know, David, I didn't think you were hiding it from me. And the January meeting is probably the only ROC meeting I ever missed.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, what about community input?
Sure.
I mean, did you do that prior to this? Because just surprised I didn't hear anything about how far this.
Public meetings?
Yeah, input about this building and what neighbors maybe felt about it, or.
I can check our notes, but I think we talked to H&A and we might have gone to Bryn Mawr on this one too. Because we went through the standard process of trying to get it permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
Laura, I remember updates when Wellington and Carl Eller started working together, but I can't tell you what months that happened in. So I know that, I mean, there's been reports of this on and off for like, I don't know, maybe it started a decade ago, but I think that it started moving more quickly when Wellington and Carl Eller started working together. But I don't have all the details in terms of like community meetings or how, how people in Harrison or Bryn Mawr were kept apprised of it. So you would have to talk to Harrison staff, because they would have been the people that received the notice to apprise the neighbors.
Right.
I was also asked to speak on television about this project. It's the only one I've ever done that for. So, and it was kind of funny. They cut from me to Carl Eller, and it was like, oh, well, let's just have the big guy talk, and like let's not listen to him anymore.
David, I assume at some point or other you asked ROC to write a letter of support to CPAD, et cetera, way back in the day before you sought approval. So it must have been presented at some point to ROC before you sent it to the Planning Commission.
That
and I'll be honest, I don't remember it at all.
Hi, everyone. This is Nicole from Harrison Neighborhood Association. Can you all hear me? I'm having some internet issues.
We can hear you great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I believe that Wellington, that you did do a presentation, like an initial kind of presentation about Curry Commons to Harrison. I feel like it was like maybe right before the pandemic hit. But yeah, I can't really remember exactly when either. But also, you all are on the agenda for Harrison's next board meeting on August 9th at 7 p.m. to give another community update.
Okay. I have the agenda if there are no more questions on the Curry building. Okay, Laura.
I just want to say that this is just a really perfect example in terms of, development takes a long time. I can remember Carl coming to the first Harrison meeting saying that he wanted to buy the land, and he had this vision and he didn't know how long it was going to take to make it real. But he was going to stick with it. And here we are, it's actually happening because development takes a long time. And so I think I'm just really pleased that I'm very pleased that this is actually coming to reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when Carl came, having first bought that piece of property, he came and talked to ROC, and God, that was years ago, years and years ago. So, and we cleaned up both his property and the one next door. Do you remember that we cleaned the two properties at the same time? Yeah. Laura, you had one other question for this agenda, and that was
505,000.
$55,000 from the American Recovery Act. How is it being allocated and used?
Correct.
Beth?
David, do you remember that I sent you a link to a PowerPoint?
I'll go get it. Hang on. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah. It should be a simple answer, but it isn't, because there's substantial federal money coming and it's in many different categories. But there is the townhouse project that you're involved with is getting some sort of special designation. Is that right, David?
That's my understanding, though. They weren't able to show up this evening because of prior engagements. So I don't know. I don't have the specifics about how much they received through the ARP. Is this what you sent me, Beth?
Yes. And about 4 or 5 slides into it, there is, I think you maybe just went past it. The home, let's see.
The housing and homes?
I can help to answer this question, since Harrison Neighborhood Association was working to help secure this funding in partnership with Twin Cities Habitat and the City of Lakes Land Trust. Was $550,000 to provide a gap funding for affordability in that project, to bring affordability levels down to around 40% of area median income for as many units as possible.
Nicole, is there specific sites where that money is going to be applied?
That is the,
Go ahead.
yeah, so I think your question is just about like the townhome project. Is that correct?
Okay, it goes to David's townhome project,
Well,
or some of it?
Well,
so
I'll let you answer that, David.
I no longer own the land to the west of Leaf. So if we'll go back to the map real quick. So this blue part right here, this is the Leaf townhome site. So Wellington acquired this land, blue, the green, and then the prime block where Art Space and we built an office building. We bought that in 2016. We have since sold the blue portion, this 37,000 square feet assemblage of parcels, to a joint venture between Habitat and the City Lakes Community Land Trust, which is located on Glenwood. And they are building this project. This is the 17 unit owner occupied income restricted townhome project that they've been working on for a couple of years. And this is what received $550,000 through the American Recovery Funds. I can't remember what it's called, ARP, that Nicole was just referencing.
I'm getting old, but this is the first time I think I'm seeing this.
Oh, I think that David has talked about the townhomes to be up near Cedar Lake Road several times.
Okay.
I thought that this would be a nicer transition to the neighbors across the street, across Cedar Lake Road. So,
yep.
And that it's a nice element to have it be owner occupied, but also have some subsidy. So it's more affordable than most new construction townhomes.
What are they going to be sold at?
Hey, let me jump in here, because I don't remember whether it was a Harrison board meeting or a ROC meeting, but I know that I attended a meeting with the Habitat, came and made a very in-depth presentation in terms of what they wanted to do, and it would be pre-pandemic because there was an actual meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm seeing here is exactly what they talked about when they made their presentation.
Yeah, this project was first presented to Harrison back in the late summer, early fall of 2019, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and I attended a community engagement session where Habitat and City of Lakes Land Trust gave a fairly thorough presentation. And I guess the pandemic is our reference. That was definitely online more recently during the pandemic.
So can everybody see this map? This is the way that I try to keep all these different projects straight because there's a lot of them. So one is Leaf. That's the office building that we've built, and we delivered that in summer of 2019. Number 2 is the art space project that just delivered. And then number 3 is the townhome project that we're talking about right now. And so that's that kind of stranded 37,000 square foot parcel that currently has Watson Forsberg's construction trailer on it, or it did until maybe last week or the week before. And it's been a parking lot and then a bunch of grass. And that parking lot was originally for the Leaf manufacturing facility for their workers. And so when we acquired the Leaf site, we got that property too. And we've always been like, well, this is, the neighbors on this block are more duplex and triplex in orientation. And then it's more of a single family home neighborhood across the street to the west on the other side of Cedar Lake Road. And it feels to us like we need a little buffer between the higher density down in the valley where art space and our Leaf office building, and then the additional higher density development that we have planned and the single family neighborhood. And so that townhome site has always been conceptualized as kind of that in between massing where it's like 2 or 3 stories and some density, but not quite as much as what we were planning for the rest of the valley.
David, just out of curiosity, did we have the groundbreaking ceremony for your Leaf property on this townhome property way back in the day?
Yes. Good memory, Michael. Yep.
I'd like to say something because having been around this for a long time, Michael and Vita and Vicky, et cetera. Well, the whole idea of ROC and the potential of what that whole area could become started with kind of a bad format of office warehouse kind of buildings. We went through a lot of studies. We were fortunate that the Bassett Creek Valley was fortunate having Ryan come in and developing a plan. While this is not what that plan ultimately came from, I just think it's absolutely incredibly fortunate for the plan and for the whole community that Wellington has been so involved and made the kind of commitments they have. I'm just looking at this and looking at how many buildings now Wellington will have touched as part of this planning effort. But then if you added to that, and there's a couple blank spots up there along Second and going north towards Glenwood that have some other work going on already at the corner of Fremont and Glenwood, et cetera. So it's sometimes hard maybe to see because it is so slow, but there is such a energy in all of that plan from my perspective to see after 20, what is it, Vita, 22 years or something?
24.
23 years, whatever it has been. And I truly, when I saw the deferred development fee show up and it told me that Wellington plans on staying there, that's an important concept. So I really think for the community, this is exactly the hope that it started with, that there would be this kind of commitment. And I also see that Collage, as the planning entity, is a participant in so much of the work that's being done, that they're connecting their work along with the engineering. So there's a thought pattern that goes beyond the property lines. That's the important part.
Well, but one of the things I'm noticing is that when Wellington says they're going to continue, is that the upgrades with the new buildings that are being put in, whether it's affordable or market rate, they'll be kept up. They're not going to just build and then walk away. That there will be somebody who will be responsible to ensure that the buildings survive, that they survive in good health and all the rest of it. That's really important.
So
And if I remember correctly, Habitat is made a commitment to the residents. That it's not going to be exactly, I don't want to say wraparound services because, people that move into the townhouses don't necessarily need services, But Habitat's if I remember their presentation correctly, they're going to stay involved with the project, that they're not just going to be involved in the building of the project and then move on to something else, that they've made a commitment for this project to be an asset and an amenity to the Harrison neighborhood.
Go to the city.
Vicki, that is correct. So actually starting in January of 2020, we started doing outreach with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity to bring interested residents into the process of going through like the Habitat homeowner program. And so in that time, people have been working through that program to get their credit scores up and to get into a position where they could either purchase these townhomes or other Habitat homes.
I threw up this this other map that's a little, shall we say, jankier. It's a little more like my speed as opposed to collage's speed, but it shows, you know, the coming housing that's in the pipeline or has just been delivered. That's kind of south effectively of Glenwood. And so, you know, you see Art Spaces project here, the 100 units of affordable, and then the Harrison Townhome project that we've been talking about, 17 units, and then Curry Commons 187 units. But also, you know, for better or for worse, I know there's some controversy about this project up 255 Girard, but that's 95 units of, you know, mostly market rate, and then like 60% AMI units. And then the 1207 Glenwood project that I think is going to start construction this fall. That's what it feels like to me. And that's 125 units of market rate. And so there's this kind of energy. And as you know, Chuck and others have pointed out, the development takes a long time, but then also there's kind of this inertia that all of a sudden shifts. And what I think we are committed to is that shift can happen really rapidly in a submarket. And I think everybody that I've talked to that is engaged and has lived in Harrison is nervous about that shift and that change that can occur really rapidly in Harrison if the right economic or the wrong economic winds push it in that direction. And if that happens, it could all change really dramatically and really quickly. And that's when displacement and gentrification have really negative impacts on the fabric of this neighborhood. And so I think we just need to be very mindful that it's good that this development takes a while, and that we're trying to do like one project a year if we can. And it's kind of turning into like one project every other year timeframe, and we're kind of good with that. That feels like a digestible pipeline for us as an organization, so that we get the feedback from the community about what that project should look like and how it should take shape, but also so that the neighborhood can process the last project or the last two projects that have come online. And now we're starting to see that there are other developers that are kind of getting comfortable with this submarket. And, you know, they have their own aspirations and intent and definition of what success looks like in this neighborhood. And we should welcome those ideas, but also maintain composure under a different time frame that might get compressed with regard to development that could occur more rapidly as the economic winds have shifted.
One of the things I think is also important to stress, David, is the fact, I'll go back to the fact you're looking at a long-term potential. There will be those folks who are there for a short-term, do it now, take the money out and run. And the bad thing that starts to happen is there's a lot of rental properties that are close by. I just see that when I look at this map, this photograph, I look across where you've got duplexes and fourplexes, et cetera. And those things get bought up by out-of-town developer or realty companies, and they start taking this on, which changes the complexion of what is a neighborhood. And from Harrison's neighborhood part of things, I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. You guys have to think about what you're doing for the people that are right there. I know you're doing it, but trust me, if you can find ways to help develop some of the folks that have there that own those little properties that don't necessarily want to move, but they can't afford to maybe do the upgrades, et cetera. that don't know how to ask. Look at how you might be able to develop a program to help keep those small owners that may own 2 or 3 units to stay in the neighborhood because they've been operating, and they probably help the people that are living there. So that's a really important component of this in rental housing. Yeah, I see it every project around the cities. Those rental properties go, they get torn down, something else happens to them, and it's a terrible loss.
One of the things that we as ROC have been very conscious of is that when we encourage developers to come in, when we encourage projects to move forward, we are trying to think of the neighborhood as a whole. There are poor people, there are people who can make ends meet, there are people who have excess, and that whole area, both the Bryn Mawr half of it and the Harrison half of it, are all part of the larger city of Minneapolis and what is good for the larger city of Minneapolis. And that's always something that we as ROC have to be very, very careful that we consider as we look at projects or encourage projects. Okay. Laura, do you want to ask any more questions on those issues?
Thank you.
No? Okay, so the next project is, I think we should talk to Andrea if she's still there. Andrea? Oh, you are there.
I'm here. Yeah, hi.
We need to talk about what our relationship with CPED is going to be. CPED has been an enormous part of who we are. You heard me mention the previous ones to Beth. And it's just that they guide us with, on a regular basis, they guide us with what the laws are, what the rules are, what is going on, what is not going on. And especially with Tom Layton, the kinds of actions we could take in order to push the city forward towards getting some movement. And I, for one, I'm incredibly concerned that CPED cannot continue that kind of very close relationship because we as ROC have no money. We as ROC are all volunteers, and some of us have worked for years, and you can see some of the results of what we've done so far, working some of it working with Harrison, some of it working with Bryn Mawr, but always we've had our separate, the vision that the city's council set for us when they created us. So I'm a little bit concerned, not a little bit, a lot concerned about how we move forward. Anybody else want to add? I'm the only one who's.
I second what you just said, Vita.
Okay.
And I just want to, I always use this word confederacy because I'm one of the people that have been sort of doing this from the very beginning. And it's taken, at one point, there was a lot of disagreements between the neighborhoods and the businesses. And over the years, again, without CPED, I don't think we would see the development that we've seen in the valley right now because CPED has sort of kept us current with what's happening. And our goal in this confederacy, because everybody gets to go back, the businesses go back to the business association, Harrison goes back to Harrison, Bryn Mawr goes back to Bryn Mawr. It's really great when all of us have a consensus that we agree on something, but that doesn't always happen. But it doesn't preclude the individual parties going to CPED and saying, okay, this is what ROC said, but this is our particular point of view. And I think when we send things forward, when we don't have a consensus, that whatever goes into writing tries to reference the areas where there isn't consensus. But I don't know how we don't have money, we don't have staff. And I don't know how we would continue to get the information of what's going before the planning commission or what's being considered. So I don't know how we would continue with the flow of what's happening in terms of development in the valley without CPED. And maybe you could enlighten me in terms of how you see it, because I'm just drawing a blank.
I want to add, speaking for the business, from the business side, which I represented initially, or as an outcome of people leaving, the idea that there was this confrontation between the business community and the neighborhood, and it was really basically out of the 19, there were 4 business community people, and generally the feeling was one of oppression when it started. And over the years, by building, first finding Steve Faber, who represented the business community, brought in a number of contractors, developer types, Ryan being the one that came in to help develop a plan, not the city. That came from ROC. That came from the bottom up. That developed the small area master plan that we all view. And this is how the unity came together, when we had a group of people who sat down regularly with CPED. We had representatives, and we had these conversations. I don't know that we slowed anything down over the 20 plus years that I've been, 21 or what, I don't know, I can't even keep track. It was 99 that my mental connection was. So I think that this is proof that this is a good working environment and has been continuous. We've worked within all of the communities. We've had people leaving and people coming in. I know that my time is probably, well, I'm no longer on ROC, so, but my time is also ebbing and flowing through the whole even participation. And I think ROC offers several things. One is an example of what can come together when you bring people into under a government entity like CPED. You bring people together, and I think it's been very successful, slow but successful. But it's also a learning environment where new people can come in and learn from and see the historical perspective. So I really think this is beneficial for all the parties in question, to not where no singular entity benefits more than anybody else.
Unless anyone else would like to share some perspective, I'm happy to jump in and talk, share with you the discussions that we've been having in CPED.
I'll follow up. When the new planning and zoning came out, if Beth hadn't been here to help us through that whole process, we might still be talking about it, because it was all foreign to us and we didn't understand it. But Beth did an excellent job of explaining it to us and how the new planning and zoning fit in with ROC's old small area plan, and how it fit with the city's vision for the LRT stops that were going to be in Harrison. So, I don't know how we'd survive without somebody like Beth to guide us along from time to time.
One of the things that has continually been brought forward about ROC is that it's the one organization that works from the down up, and also that it combines and unifies Harrison neighborhood, Bryn Mawr neighborhood, business community, park board, Friends of Bassett. We all are working together to create and maintain a working or a neighborhood. We speak as ROC, we speak on behalf of the city, not for one entity or another, but for what we think is good for the whole city. And that, in that, we are helped by the information that CPED has provided us over the years. Anyway, that's it. So, begging you on my knees, sorry, you'll have to come and help me up. We really need to have consistent CPED presence on the ROC. That's how we were formed, that's how we've moved forward, and I can't see other ways of doing it.
So could I ask, is Andrea going to give us some conversation about, or some background about the conversation, or?
I'm happy to. I just want to make sure that everyone is sharing. I just want to make sure everyone's done sharing their perspective.
Well, we just want to plead our case. I think that's what all of us have, a passion for this whole idea. So we're hoping that we can figure out a way to keep this whole relationship in the forefront.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And my colleague Jim Bull is here as well, I believe. Jim, are you here?
Yeah, I see him.
Okay, great. So Jim is here as well. And if I could go back, I would have made sure that we included some more detailed information in the email that I sent out about Beth's departure. We did this, well, I'm not gonna lie, there's just been a lot going on, as I know everyone here is extremely well aware of. This CPED is one of the parts of the city that is definitely at the forefront of a lot of crisis response over the last year and a half. We've been doing this work. We've been prioritizing meeting the emergency needs of residents and businesses that are suffering from economic impacts of the pandemic. And we've been doing all of this work with reduced staffing levels. The pandemic brought with it a financial crisis to the city. And the result was that CPED, like every other department in the city, has had frozen positions. So we've had folks leave, folks retire like Beth is, and we've not been able to refill those positions. Meanwhile, we're doing 25% or more more work, because we also have, in addition to all of the other work that we have all of the emergency response work related to not just the pandemic response, but the CPED is also doing a lot of work in working in communities that were hit the hardest by civil unrest last summer. So all of that is just to say, we are absolutely, we have significant constraints on our staffing capacity. So when we were, we certainly weren't going to, ask Beth to not participate in the ROC, or to, to not continue to support this group. But when Beth made the decision to retire, the fact of the matter is we just don't have the same, we don't have staffing capacity in the economic policy and development team, which Beth is part of. We don't have staffing capacity in that team to dedicate full time to supporting the ROC. And so so that was all we were trying to convey, is just to be very transparent with you and direct and honest in our communication around the fact that we're not going to be assigning somebody else from business development where Beth currently works. That said, what we should have highlighted more in the email correspondence is is how much, not just because we did this in that correspondence, we talked about how much we value the ROC and highlighted a lot of the really wonderful accomplishments that that you all really deserve a ton of credit for. So we value all of those contributions, but we also will continue to value those contributions. We absolutely want to make sure that the ROC still is able to provide meaningful input on any of the work or development that's happening in Bassett Creek Valley. We have some ideas for how we think we can do that together, understanding the significant constraints that we have on our capacity, also understanding the importance of you all and the contributions that you have made and will continue and are willing to continue to make in the future of Bassett Creek. So what we're proposing is a couple of things. One is that, and Jim can speak probably better to this. Jim is, I think many of you know, Jim is in our community planning group. And so Jim is making sure that the ROC it will be added to the list of groups that are notified with any land use application, any land use activity that's happening in Bassett Creek that either goes to the Planning Commission or goes to the Board of Estimate. So that's one definitive thing that we can do to make sure that anything that is being proposed for development activity that you are notified of that. Additionally, I would like to continue to be on your distribution list, and I would like to participate when I'm able. Jim would like to continue to be on your list and participate in these meetings as he's able. And between having our participation, like I said, when we're able, and being notified when there are development proposals in Bassett Creek Valley, those are two ways I think we can stay connected. And a third, I would say, is that when if there's some development that you're aware of, before it hits a land use trigger point, that we would notify you. If there are things that are happening, if there are things happening through the rezoning study or other work that's happening in CPED, and there's specific topics of interest, or there's specific either development projects or land use policy or other policy. I mean, and I would open it up and say even other things like housing policy or other things that you may be interested in, and you want someone to come and speak to you about sort of what, provide more context, provide background, be able to answer questions. I mean, we're happy to come also by invitation when there are specific topics that are of interest to you. So we want to, we absolutely value all of you and the contributions you're making. And it's not only that we value it, we really feel like we need your input, and that the input that you provide to us improves, makes a difference and improves the development potential in this area. And so we want to support it. We want you to continue to meet and to discuss these issues and to weigh in on what's happening. And we want to support you in doing that. And we are committed to doing that. I just can't assign we just can't, unfortunately, replicate Beth Grossen.
I'm going to jump in here for a second, because again, I'm going to go back to the very beginning, and the reason why we ended up not with Beth, with Tom Layton and Daryl Washington. When this all started, we would be like fanned out throughout city government and the city council, getting information here, there, wherever, and it got really confusing for the city. I mean, we all came together and we brought our information together so that we had some sort of unified information. But from the city's point of view, it got really confusing because we had so many contacts with so many people that they wanted to designate a point person. And yes, Beth has gone above and beyond more than a point person for sure. But I would encourage you to sort of designate a point person who would probably be doing, and at some point the finances may turn around. But I understand what you're saying in terms of all the pressures on CPED right now. But designating a point person where we will be very understanding of your pressures, but otherwise we're left back to where we started. And unfortunately or fortunately, we're all really very verbal and resourceful. And so there's no other way that we can continue to get the information that we're getting unless we go back to this fanning out throughout city government and having contacts with, 10, 15 people, rather than having sort of a consistent information point. So I hope you would take that under consideration. And as long as you understand that we would expect far less of who this person was than we're currently expecting of Beth, just because of your constraints. But having one point person, I think would be very helpful.
To add to what Vicky just said, having the single point person is that person then carries forward history. If you send different people at different times, they don't carry forward. They don't have the history of what's going on. And the other thing to consider is one of the things that we work at in conjunction with whoever the city person is to slow down development so that gentrification doesn't happen overnight in the valley. We want to be careful that we develop the area. I mean, it's an incredible piece of property just sitting there, but develop it in such a way that it benefits everywhere. It benefits the city, it benefits Bryn Mawr, it benefits Harrison, it benefits the businesses. But carrying forward the historical in their head, it would be very helpful to have only the one point person from the city. They can say, oh yeah, you did have a review back when, as David was talking, several of us we're reaching that age where our memories are not as perfect as they used to be. And it helps to have others remind us, yes, we've heard this before. Yes, we've done this before. Yes, look forward to this. Anyway.
And every time if you look historically, how this whole group was formed and coming out of Heritage Park, a lot of difficulties the city had faced back in the 1990s, that and most people looked at the Bassett Creek Valley with very little potential, that it was a place that we could plunk down a bunch of industrial, the city was looking for more industrial space. We could plunk down a bunch of office warehouses. It scared the business community because everything that was drawn at the time showed up as tearing down all of what was existing. But the community, everybody came together and acted like a singular a CAC, a community
advisory
committee. Thank you. That's another one of my slowing down things. Community advisory committee. And I think it has remained that. It's not that we're trying to tell anybody anything. And Andrea, one of the things, the way you were telling us, is that you want us to kind of stay on top of it. But on the other side, we bring to the city, one is that historic knowledge. Not those of us who have been there for a long time are going to be gone. But the historic knowledge, but a working arrangement that the city does not have to recreate. And I don't think that, yes, we're going to miss Beth, but I think that Beth's role is probably even not as necessary now. We can probably do so, just how the ROC works if we have more knowledge about these options and connection. So a small period of time that person has to spend may be all that's needed to kind of keep the ROC as a benefit to the city rather than you waiting for us to say something to you. I think that's the thing, is the communication ought to be a linkage rather than us coming to you and say, well, we think about this. I find that this is not the only public area I've been in all my time here in the city of Minneapolis. So I've seen this happen, the ebb and flow, but this is a potential that I don't think should ebb. I think historically there's a potential to keep this running throughout the development process. There's still the whole banana area. There's still a lot of things that can be benefited by the city's connection with ROC. I'm sorry, I shouldn't take so much time.
I appreciate those comments and I agree. I think that there's a lot of benefit to the city.
So Beth, how much is it going to take to keep you to stay?
Well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and no, I'm pretty firm on this, but I really am wanting it to be a smooth transition. And so all of the projects that I have been working with, I want to make sure that staff are really familiar with it and make good introductions, and so that there's a smooth pass as possible. So like with Wellington's projects, you know, in cases where there's environmental grants or other city financial resources, of course, there's still going to be CPAD staff involvement, you know, as they're, yeah, clearly not every block is already under construction in all of Bassett Creek Valley. So there's more to come, but it might be of a more traditional sort where staff members are assigned to kind of manage individual projects.
That's a project by project kind of relationship. Whereas what we're talking about is somebody who knows the valley inside out, who's worked with us on a consistent basis, who knows how we work, how we argue, how we then go behind a vote and things of that kind.
Yeah, well, you realize that you are really unique. That you are not, I don't have a lot of colleagues that likewise are only working or primarily working in a single area. Mark Garner has done a lot along the light rail, but otherwise the majority of all of my colleagues are kind of working kind of all over the city. So it's unique. That really look at what Jim and I have been working so much in North Minneapolis, but specifically in Bassett Creek Valley for many years. Yep. So you really need to use Jim as a resource too.
Oh, Jim, you're being volunteered.
You know, I would also like to, I want to just chime in on two different things. One is that, again, I want to say that I particularly understand the pressures that you're under right now, not just with the pandemic, but with rebuilding areas that, you know, have been devastated through, you know, civil unrest, that takes a lot of staff time, it takes a lot of money. So my expectation is that our relationship with CPAD would change because those are the priority areas. But so I'm suggesting, I don't know, CPAD has interns ever. You know, I'm just looking for one point person who can take information back rather than you getting information from all the different city council offices and a variety of other city staff. I want to keep this more organized. And then the other thing I'm going to say, which is like looking ahead, I am absolutely convinced that there will be money for high-speed rail. And I don't know what CPED's involvement is going to be from the Duluth line or coming up through Rochester. But, you know, the whole idea of the development in the banana and the train storage has been way on the back burner because there's been no money. Once that happens, the CPED's involvement is going to, there's something you need to consider when you're planning for how you're going to allocate your staff, because that gets really complicated because it has state, federal, you know, for a while, we didn't know exactly which door to knock on when they were talking about high-speed rail. And I think that some of the county commissioners have turned over who were more conversant with that. But that is something that I just want to make sure that you have in the back of your mind in terms of something in next year and a half is going to become far more active. But again, interns, just a point person, and this person sometimes might have to remind us, you guys are not our priority right now. I'm too busy to do this for you. And I think that we would be very respectful of that.
So I think that, I mean, and Jim can speak to the LRT issue that was just raised, but I think that I mentioned earlier that, I mean, Jim has been participating in these meetings and he's willing to continue to participate in these meetings. He doesn't have the capacity to, you know, he won't be able to take on any kind of like administrative responsibilities related to his role, but in terms of having a presence and a consistent presence, that is something that we are offering. Again, we aren't, there will be, he won't have the capacity to, you know, I don't know, and forgive me for being, not having a deep familiarity with exactly how Beth has supported this group. But so I don't know what, I can't really tell you exactly what the differences would be, other than just to say that, you know, Jim's capacity is pretty much limited to being here and being a resource to you.
And for me, I would say wonderful, because without Jim, you don't know the history of the impound lot. But I can tell you absolutely for sure, we would not have made it through that morass without Jim's help. So if I know personally that Jim is going to be coming to meetings and we can still have conversations with him, then I have the assurances that I need to go forward.
And, you know, and he can't, he might not be able to attend all of the meetings, but I think, you know, you know, well, I think, Jim, were you going to chime in there?
Well, I was just gonna say, Andre, I am doing 2 jobs right now. So just so people understand that. So so I'm not sure that I would attend every meeting, but if you need a point person, that's fine. I do think, and I've been in this type of role with other things. I think I know many of you and I like all of you, and I trust that your intentions are good, but I find what happens a lot of times with this is people think, oh, we've got a person now to do everything. And you know, then the first time you say, I can't do everything, people get upset about it. So I think, Andrea, I don't know if that's what we're saying. I'm fine with being a point person that people can contact, but I do think one thing that you all can do as an organization, and I mean this respectfully and with kindness in my heart, is to get on. I can't have 56 members of the ROC each sending a question. You know, I think you guys have to get together a little bit and say, what is the question, or what is the ask that we have? And I say this because I think about when we changed the land use in the area, which Beth did a lot of the coordinating work, but you know, she asked me to come out and I talked about changing it from residential, and a bunch of people showed up and said it was great. And then I went to the next meeting and a bunch of people who didn't want to change from residential showed up and threw paper and were, what are you doing you're ruining the ROC plan? I think that's what takes a taxes staff, that type of stuff. So to the sense that you can figure out what you have questions or comments or issues and then ask for our help, I think then it's a lot easier for us to do it. And we're all human, right? that's not always gonna work perfectly, but to the sense that you can think of trying to do it that way, makes it easier for us to, to get your good answer. I always get amazed by people say, hey, I asked 13 different people at the city and I got 13 different answers. And my response is, well, you asked 13 different people from the city. So, we had 5 people on our team, and David probably knows this. The planners all the time say this to the developers, hey, we need you to have a point person too. We can't have your architect and your finance people and your site manager all asking the same question a different way of 6 different people. So I think to the extent that we can make it a two-way street like that, I think we can probably provide a lot of help on a lot of the questions you have. And I think Beth would be the first to tell you that when big things happen, we in CPED on the north, we've got a north side team. We're not perfect, and a lot of things have changed over the last year. We do try and tell each other. So there were a lot of times where I'd see stuff and I'd say, hey, Beth, maybe this is something the ROC should know about. So we're not going to stop doing that either. One other thing I just want to back up really quickly too is when Andrea was talking about the notices that we would do, she said that we would put you on the notices for and this is, I think, just a slip, Board of Estimates and City Planning Commission. We would not be doing it for the Board of Estimates. It would be the Board of Adjustment, which does the variances. And a lot of people would say, well, who cares about fence variances and all that? But they also hear interpretations of the zoning administrator. So you guys remember when Pioneer Paper went through all of their stuff, that went to the Board of Adjustment. So, you would be on the list for the Board of Adjustment for probably the pretty rare time something big like that happened. And then for the Planning Commission, which are all the big projects like David was showing here at the meeting. Those notices also go to Bryn Mawr and Harrison as well, but they would go to you as an organization. And Vita, we have you as the contact we're sending it to. So.
And also as a point of reference and clarification for you, generally speaking, when ROC makes a decision and they vote on something, it's something that comes as a single voice to you. I don't think that in the past, Beth, you'll have to correct me. In the past, I don't think the individual ROC members have bombarded Beth with lots of questions about do this, do that, do the other, what's this, what's that. Generally speaking, it's like I'm going to be writing a letter for David for his Curry project. Generally what we do is I write the first draft, circulate it, it gets corrected, write the final draft, and it gets sent. Andrea, it'll be coming to you. But we don't have in the past, I don't think, Beth, have we had it? Where individuals from the ROC with different viewpoints come and ask you to do things?
I certainly have gotten some communication with different members of the ROC, but it's because they view me as a place to be helpful, I guess. I think Jim was coming more from a perspective of, when there is a controversial matter and, there's a certain time for public comment, then it certainly is very helpful to have ROC be coherently, summarizing their recommendations in a letter. But yes, over the years, I certainly have gotten comments or articles brought to my attention, and there have been individual questions from several members. I mean, obviously, I have a lot more to do than just be involved with your committee, but it has, I think, been helpful in terms of spurring activity that now is getting to be a little bit closer to being self-generating with my involvement over the years. It was remarkable that for many years there didn't seem to be any investment in that area along Glenwood, and now we can certainly see a lot. I'll just quickly mention, Andrea, you probably aren't familiar with the discussions with HECRA and Vicky's comments about the high-speed rail. What she's talking about is a heavy rail system. It's not light rail. And so among the things that I'm going to be passing on to my supervisor are those files that show the map as to where that, those high-speed rail cars would be stored on Linden Yards. And there, obviously the reservation for the light rail station and development closer to the station is part of that too.
Yeah.
I think, Jim, you were part of those conversations.
Yeah, when I first started doing stuff on the north side, I went where we were putting the building over the storage and so forth. And typically what happens with those transit projects is Public Works Transportation Planning leads them. So we would rope them in, but there's usually somebody from our planning or CPED that's a part of those projects as well. And then in this case, because of Bass Creek Valley, Beth was involved. So
yeah,
no, we
so
wouldn't
anyway,
ignore that.
I will share those documents in our common folder to Jim, so that you have those final versions of that understanding between the city council and Hennepin County. That was done, yeah, back several years ago.
But I just want to reiterate, Vita, I wasn't necessarily saying that there was anything wrong that you all were doing. I was just saying, I've got 20 years with the city and I've been in these things before. And I'm just trying to give advice on the best way to not to overwhelm the city staff, to make it so city staff can help you, is that there can be a point person on both sides. I think it works best that way. Does that mean if one of you contacts me as a citizen in Minneapolis, I'm going to hang up the phone on you? No, but I'm just saying, I think it works better that way. And then on the more controversial things where you guys might not all agree, it helps then for you to come to a consensus. I felt like, and I mean this respectfully, but I felt like that happened a little bit with the land use. Eventually you all got to the same spot, but I went to 2 or 3 meetings where, depending on who showed up at the meeting, I got very different feedback. And so again, that's my job. I'm supposed to be out doing that. I'm not saying, and that's, your job, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm not really blaming anybody. I'm just saying, to the sense that, we can kind of all get on the same page and work through point people and all that kind of stuff. It will work much better.
So I have a question, because I think, Jim, what you experienced was community meetings, which, and from speaking from the Harrison, as a former Harrison resident, our community meetings are always very animated. And yes, it does depend on who comes to the community meeting, and there's often not the same people at different community meetings. I don't know about the Bryn Mawr meetings. But in terms of a point person, like Vita is a good point person for ROC. But when we don't agree, maybe it would be helpful if, say, the business say, this is the point person for the business, and Harrison would say, this is the point person for Harrison, and same for Bryn Mawr. So you're not inundated with like 10, 12, so that we don't fill up your voicemail, basically. And that's something that we would have to internally work on to see if all of the individual members would think that's a good idea.
Or is it, Jim, are you just asking for the ROC to effectively acknowledge formally that there is no consensus or agreement?
Well, I'll just say it one more time. And I hate using names and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but when Beth asked me to come out and talk about changing the land use, yes, we did talk with the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. I went out there, and yes, we did talk with the Harrison neighborhood, but we had a couple of ROC meetings where, and I know some of the ROC members were also Harrison members or Bryn Mawr members or whatever, but we just had one meeting where everybody was like, yeah, let's look at revising the residential. And then I went to the next meeting and people that were there, and they were ROC people, but I won't mention names, but I know they were ROC people because Beth told me who was who, and they were just very upset about changing the land use. And I was just saying, to me, that was 3 meetings I went to. That's the kind of stuff where we end up saying it's hard for us to provide staff resources. This is all I was trying to say. So I realize that democracy is messy. Citizens are citizens. You're not paid to do what I do, that may still happen. I'm just saying, to the extent that people can kind of work together and get on the same page about what they want from us, the easier it'll be for us to respond to that. That's all I'm trying to say. And I probably should have just not said anything about it. It would have made the meeting a lot shorter and everybody a lot happier.
No,
Jim, I think
I would like to oh, sorry. I would just like to to respond to that, Jim, and just say that, yeah, a lot of times the ROC will vote and take a stance that is in direct opposition to the Harrison Neighborhood Association's official stance on land use decisions or development projects that are in the Harrison neighborhood. And so the H&A board has been debating for the last several months whether or not to continue participation in this group, because it feels on the one hand redundant because we have the same developers coming to us in H&A and making presentations, and we as a board and as a community come to a decision, and then we come to this body, have the same presentations from the developers about the same projects, and then the ROC comes to a decision that is contrary to what H&A has decided, and then on the back end we have to go to council meetings or planning commission meetings to say, yeah, the ROC made this decision, but Harrison has decided this on its own. And so we feel that there are redundancies, and we feel that throughout history, there has not been unity in the ROC, particularly as it relates to these decisions in Harrison, and as it relates to the best interests of Harrison residents with regard to gentrification and displacement.
Hey, Nicole, it's great that you jumped in here. I appreciate you coming as a staff member for H&A. Some of the board members who are here tonight or listening in the conversation and just want to be able to make sure that we're moving forward in a way that actually engages neighborhood residents and all of that conversation that has come in the past with this stuff, I think is a good chance for everybody to take a pause here and think back to what are the key goals we're working towards, who are the people we're aligning around, and with the shifts in staffing and everything else that we're hearing tonight, coupled with, your contributions, et cetera. I think this is a good chance for us, maybe as the ROC and people who pay attention to these meetings, to have a kind of fundamental conversation around what comes next and what this board or group looks like going forward. And I think just for those of us who care a little bit, not city staffers who are required or paid to be here, et cetera, but those of us who actually want to be contributing should take this time to think twice about what we represent, who we are, how we share out, and go forward from there, because we can't expect and rely on city staff to keep supporting us in the way they have. Beth, you've been amazing. You've brought great information, but this is a good time for kind of a fundamental look at what we are as a group and how we organize and how we share out information, just to make sure that, no one has any chance to say that a board's goals or their views are the one truth or one source of truth. We obviously have broad, diverse groups that represent both neighborhoods, a lot of views, a lot of needs. I still have yet to hear anyone talk about bringing a grocery store to anything in the developments in the Valley. So there is a very broad and holistic need to ask some pretty fundamental questions here. And again, I think understanding that we are losing a giant amount of support from staff is only a call to arms, a call to action, perhaps, to really make sure that we have a clear, cohesive vision, voice, and a transparent relaying of the things that are going on here.
And Nicole,
Can I just ask, is that Nick?
Nope, this is Tim.
Oh,
Okay.
Tim, sorry.
I just want to jump in and respond to Nicole. Again, I want to say that we're a confederacy because, again, over the years, there's been a number of things where we have not agreed upon, but ROC has put forward a statement generally acknowledging those disagreements where they are. And then, I'm much more familiar with Harrison than making their own very cogent points. What ROC decides does not necessarily say, okay, Harrison, you got to agree with everything we're doing, because that's not going to happen. And I'm more familiar in terms of like the impound lot and train storage. I could go through like a decade worth of areas where we don't agree, but that's why we're a confederacy where each individual group has their own voice. And so ROC may not always agree with what Harrison's priorities are, but that's just fine, because we're not a cohesive group. We're a very diverse group. We have the neighborhood economic statuses are different. The businesses have their own interests. It is really takes a lot of time and effort to reach consensus, and we don't always do it. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to stop working together as a group. We're going to work through it.
I would like to add to what Vicki just said. You, Nicole, and HNA represent Harrison neighborhood, which has completely different, probably goals than Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association for Bryn Mawr. ROC speaks for the valley. And so we may not agree, we may disagree with you and with Bryn Mawr on how we move forward. That's going to happen. And it's not disrespectful. It's not ignoring what your needs are. It's adding all kinds of new issues to how we make a decision or how we reach a conclusion. That was what the city council chose to, to task us with, that we speak for development in the Bassett Creek Valley. And it should benefit Harrison, it should benefit Bryn Mawr, it should benefit the businesses, but overall, it should benefit the city. So yeah, there will be times when we totally disagree with Harrison and Bryn Mawr and anybody else.
Can I just ask, has the relationship or the appointments by, I'm just kind of curious where other facets of the city are at with ROC. Is the city council continuing to appoint members? I'm just kind of thinking about all of the appointing bodies and checking in with them.
No, the city council gave that decision or that burden to the neighborhood association. So Harrison picks its 4, Bryn Mawr picks its 4, businesses pick their 4, city council members each have 2, the mayor has 1, park board, oh, sorry, I forgot, Dave Stack and Friends of Bassett Creek have, but they left that decision of who the members are to the nominating entities. That they bring those entities' views to the ROC. ROC then melds them all together and comes up with a generic, holistic, I presume is the only way you can talk about it.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that, or ask that, since with CPAD, not having the bandwidth, is anything changing with how the city council members?
I can only speak for my city council member. I have Lisa's support as we move forward.
Point has decided she's continuing to put forward.
Everybody's echoing on my hand. I can't hear what anybody's saying.
Mine too. It just suddenly got garbled. Mackenzie, were you still speaking? Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mackenzie's picture and voice is freezing up.
Okay.
Okay, can you all hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so, so Vita, you've checked in with Lisa Goodman, Councilmember Goodman, and she'll continue to appoint 2 people?
Yes.
Okay. Has anyone checked in with Ellison, Councilmember?
I have an email out to them, but I will send another email and make other contact because I wanted to hear the context of this conversation first, because if I'm going to summarize what I'm hearing is that, we can have a point person, but we need to be far more respectful of people's time. And Jim, I'm going to apologize to you because I know in the past I can be very direct and rude, so I'm sorry. But, we have to do some internal figuring in terms of how we're going to move forward. So I didn't have anything specific to say to Councilmember Ellison's office as of yet, but I will do so.
Okay.
So my understanding is that Jeremiah's office has been trying to figure out, I guess, the status of this group and whether or not it's an official citizen advisory body of the city of Minneapolis. And I think that there's also, if it is a citizen advisory committee of the city of Minneapolis, that there are certain procedures that should be followed. And so I guess that's still a question that's remaining for me. And I think that that's also a question that's remaining for Harrison Neighborhood Association's board and has some bearing on whether or not H&A continues to participate.
Nicole, we really appreciate you saying these things, but I don't believe as a board member that we've had that kind of a specific discussion. So until we've had that, don't say those terms. Again, if anything, I think there is specifically a need to continue to understand and think about what ROC is, how it represents, bringing transparency, public relations and information, doing its due diligence that way. But let's keep things in a very specific swim lane for the short term on that.
Thank you, Tim. As somebody who just rejoined the board after 3 years, that there has been a lengthy conversation that's occurred for the last several months. And I think Mackenzie can also comment to those discussions. So I would like to get a response if Andrea Brennan, if you have that information or could provide a response to that question, I think that'd be really helpful. And if not here, if we could just follow up with you to get some clarification around that, that would be great.
Nicole, that was not how the ROC was set up. Letter came out from Chuck Lutz saying, this is what we need you to do, 4444, and whatever the numbers, total numbers are. We'd like you to speak on behalf of or research and promote development in the Bassett Creek Valley. We are not a citizens commission, so we don't have to follow those, not as far as I know, and not for the last 22 years. And I've been on this committee for 22 years. We have not had to, and I mentioned this to Andrea before, we have not had to publish minutes anywhere other than to the members. We have not had to publish, agendas. We let anyone who wants to know what's going on, they add themselves to the ROC email list and they get included. We are not a committee of the city in a formal sense. You as Harrison, do you, as an advisory to the city council, do you do that kind of thing that you're demanding that ROC do? We represent the valley. That's it.
Nicole, you mentioned following up. I just want to jump in here and say that I want to emphasize the value that we place on transparency, so that if whatever information can't be put forward tonight in this meeting, that if there's other follow-up, that should be shared with all of the members. Because, it would be nice if we had all of the answers tonight, but I don't think we're going to get there. This is a major change, and I think that we're going to, ROC as a group is going to have to figure out how we're going to do this going forward. And it sounds like Harrison has some things that they want to work on internally, but what's happening internally with Harrison really doesn't have a place on a ROC agenda.
Well, Vicky, I just really struggle because certain phrases are used, but then it seems, I don't know, kind of inconsistent. The whole idea that, like, for instance, Harrison appoints 4 members to the ROC, but then that the ROC, those members do not have to act in line with Harrison. And so it's just always been something that's not, that I feel is said one way sometimes and said another way other times, but that the idea that people are appointed by a neighborhood association and then don't have to act in line, I think is where a lot of the conflict or kind of votes in differing directions, that's where that comes from.
Historically, I will respond that, I have been a Harrison rep to this group.
Right.
And I can tell you that how I operated as a Harrison rep was to bring information back to the Harrison Development Committee and to the board to get some sort of idea from the Development Committee and the board as to what Harrison's position was, and then to represent that position when I came to a ROC meeting.
Yeah.
What is happening internally with Harrison right now is something between you, Nicole, the board, and your representatives. But the rest of us, I mean, I'm not a Harrison rep now, and Vita isn't, and how you decide to relate to the ROC in terms of the organization itself and the members that you appoint to ROC is something that you need to do outside of a ROC meeting. That's internal to Harrison.
Yeah, I appreciate that it is internal to Harrison, but in our ability to make that decision internally, we would like to know what the status is of this body, of this group. Is this a citizen advisory committee? Is this officially tied to the city of Minneapolis? Those are questions that we would like to have answered so that we can help us make that decision. And since we have folks from the city here with us tonight, I felt like it was an appropriate time to ask that question.
Nicole, again, thank you for speaking on behalf of the board members who are here on this call, whether they're on the ROC or not. This is, again, I think kind of a wonderful dovetail for this group to continue to think about what we look like going forward to best utilize whatever resourcing and support we can get from the city, but also to keep being a part or not being a part of this group, depending on the best way to move forward to help bring the most cohesive citywide, holistic, healthy development possibilities to the Valley. I mean, I think that this is probably at this point, beating a dead horse. We should definitely move this conversation into the respective groups, especially for HNA and Nicole, we should definitely add this to our next agenda meeting for the board for HNA. But at the same time, without question, those of us who have been a part of this conversation, this group for a long time and in whatever capacity we have, I think has certainly found value in coming together as a holistic group, finding our neighbors, so to speak, and having a good conversation that isn't about you have to follow our one specific policy and goal, but instead, what is the right way to bring everyone together in the most value add way?
And Nicole, I'm definitely willing to participate in whatever process you put together as someone who has been a Harrison rep and a non-Harrison rep and on the board or not on the board, that I hope that you will use me as sort of a resource in terms of like institutional or historical memory, so that whatever issue it needs to be resolved within HNA, that it can be resolved. So because your participation or the participation of HNA is really, really important. And I'm sure that there isn't anybody on ROC that wants to lose HNA as an active participant in what we're doing.
There's a danger in HNA withdrawing. I mean, half the valley is in Bryn Mawr, and you would deprive HNA of having any say about what happens in that half of Bryn Mawr, including the banana. You don't want to distance yourself from that. You want to be able to have at least some thoughts on it.
Well, as a new Harrison board member, I mean, I feel like our perspective is represented through the Harrison board. And I mean, the developers come to the Harrison meetings and Harrison writes its own letters of support or letters of concern. And the portion of the valley that is in Bryn Mawr, that I know the banana is maybe considered Bryn Mawr or kind of negotiable, but the portion of the valley that's in Bryn Mawr is Bryn Mawr Meadows, which is completely different than what we spend 99% of our time talking about, the development, that's primarily being done by Wellington.
Yeah, but is this Mackenzie that's speaking? Actually, everything south of the creek is Bryn Mawr, everything north of the creek is Harrison. That's
Right.
how it has always been divided. And
Yeah.
one of the extraordinary values of Harrison being part of ROC was the Southwest LRT, which was really important, not just to Harrison, but to all the neighborhoods north of Harrison. Without ROC, our very active participation in both the siting of the line and ongoing discussions in terms of some of the transit-oriented development money, we would not, at that point I was still a Harrison rep, we would not be as an active participant in those discussions had it not been for ROC. So it's really true that right now, a lot of the focus of the development is happening in the Harrison neighborhood. But historically, that has not always been the case, nor do I believe it will be the case going forward. When the Southwest LRT is up and running, you know, we've had discussions about trying to get you know, basically daycare at the station, so that people could be close to an LRT spot and still take the train to wherever it is that they were going to work. Because at one time, most of the jobs that people were trying to get to could not be gotten to without going on 4 different buses, and they were spending their entire lives on buses and not spending time with their kids. So you have to pull back and really start looking at the bigger picture rather than sort of the microcosm of what's going on immediately.
Right. No, I mean, I think maybe part of the clarity that's needed is, the definition of Bassett Creek Valley, because I mean, Bryn Mawr is very tuned in to what's happening with the light rail and the development around the station. And, you know, they've formed their own committee, the Gateway Committee, to work with MnDOT and the light rail. I mean, those conversations are happening and not being pulled into or factored with ROC.
Yeah, but you know, Denitric, okay, I was on the citizens board for the Southwest LRT for a long time, and then stepped away from my seat. And Denitric is a person that represents Harrison on the Citizens Advisory Board. So if I don't know why you're not getting the information, or why Harrison abandoned the transit committee, because it was very active at one point. But again, you are asking the ROC to resolve issues that are internal to Harrison, and I'm certainly willing to participate in those conversations.
Just then I was talking about Bryn Mawr. I mean, I haven't been around for decades, but I have attended all 3 meetings for 2 years. And so I'm just kind of trying to sort out if there are the redundancies that have been mentioned.
And I don't see them as redundancies. I see it as not having a broader, as broad a scope of opinions as possible that can go into decision makers. We're not decision makers. You know, different people in Harrison, Bryn Mawr, in the business community, we don't all talk to the same people. And so we try to bring our different points of view to one place. And sometimes we get consensus, sometimes we don't. But when we don't get consensus, that doesn't mean that Harrison shouldn't do absolutely everything that it has done to bring its position forward. The onus is basically been on the developers who have said, well, we have to present to Harrison, we have to present to Bryn Mawr, we have to present to the ROC. But if that's the process and it's going to really help this project move forward, then that is that's time well spent.
I'm just going to pause for a second. Naomi, it sounds like you need to leave. And we did have an art space update on the agenda. Do we want to table this conversation for just like a couple of minutes to try to get the update on the art space lofts project?
If we move on, I want to thank city staff for coming. You really made it. I'm much clearer now than I was at 5:55 this evening.
I do have to jump off, but I wanted to thank you all for the invitation. Reiterate that Jim has offered to be the point person, noting, of course, the capacity constraints and the request to have one point person from the ROC going back and forth. And also just want to say, I think the question of the the official or informal nature of the ROC as a committee is complicated. There's a long history, and it may be something that falls into more of a hybrid model. But regardless of what, whether it fits into a pre-established sort of category or not, we have lots of informal, committees and citizen groups in the city, and and I think that they're tremendously valuable in providing input. And we seek input and engagement from community members in all forms, and really appreciate if the ROC is willing to continue to move forward. And if all of you are willing to continue to contribute your time, then we want you to know that your opinion and input will be valued and heard and appreciated, and we will support you as we are able. So thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
Andrea.
you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Jim, are you going to
Appreciate
stay or are
your-
you going to leave too? Oh, Jim just left.
No, I'm still here. I
Okay.
can stay.
Okay. I just want to be sure that, because that was the one item on the agenda that we really wanted to get resolved, is what our relationship is going to be with the city.
Should we, I know Naomi, you've got another meeting, so we try to get
Yeah.
to your update real quick and then we can get back to that discussion.
Yeah, and I put it in the chat. I have appreciated the really thoughtful conversation and the updates but yeah, I thought the meeting was ending at 7:30. So I kind of have a group of people waiting. So I'll be super quick. The Northside Art Space Loft's got its certificate of occupancy. Early June, we started moving, early to mid June, we started moving people into the building, the middle of June. And so we have 21 households that have moved in as of today. There are 5 moving on to the artist preference. And we have several going through compliance. So at any rate, we're starting to fill the building. We'll probably have 37 households or units out of 100 filled. And but the message I wanted to share, so I thank you, Vita, for sharing. We do have, if anyone wants to take a peek, from the neighborhood, the opportunities to seize is that on August 23rd, which is a Monday, and it was all in that email, but there's a lunch and learn from 11:30 to 1:30, so you can come and see some of the community spaces and also take a tour, so see a model unit and some of the vacancies. And then we're going to be, actually before that, on 7/31, we're not going to open up the building for tours, but we are going to be part of the Flow Northside Arts Council events, because what is happening, and the building looks beautiful. So I hope you guys come in, and if you want to coordinate some other separate time, we could do that. But it's kind of nice to come in when there are artists and applicants and just see what the flow of the building is. But so on the 31st, Floor Northside Arts Crawl, that's going to be like a bike stop. Then on August 4th is the Sweet Afternoon. It's kind of timed to Art Flow, and we're going to promote the event. So we're going to do ice cream or something cold. And then now I'm back to the August 23rd. But Art Space is also going to be doing a Art On kind of a kickoff event for our annual fund campaign. And so I'm going to pass some messages through Vita as just opportunities if you want to come in with others or friends and just check out the building. But what I will say is the building's great. We're getting incredible, amazing artists, quite diverse in their art form and backgrounds. But like what is similar to, we just did a lease up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I think the pandemic and the flow and just people's comfort level, also their economic situation, we do not have the high level of applicants that we would normally have. For 100 units, we'd be looking for 300 or 400 applicants. We're processing outside of the people who are likely to move in another 40 applications. So we really do want help spreading the word. And so I'm also, you guys can just ignore these emails, but if you know of anyone, we're doing $75 kind of gift cards for anyone who refers someone, but we really have focused and concentrated our efforts in engaging everyone on the north side and in Harrison, and we're super excited to be here. We're not getting the total flow. So the goal is for us to fill the building by September, and the requirement is that we will fill it by December. But we want to shorten up the lease up timeline. So
If somebody can send me some information, I can work it through my Facebook contacts. I don't know, I am thinking about a handful of people that I want to get it out to, but the information I have is old and vague. So if somebody just can send me some talking points or some fact sheets, I'd be happy to move those forward.
okay, I think I can look for your email, but you know, the heart of my update is the building's open, it's functioning, the spaces look great, and yeah, we're just really focused on the lease up. So it's super exciting to be past construction. And then I'm sure, as you guys all know, the first year warranty issues, and you know, we'll work out all the bugs in the building. But hopefully you guys have even just driven by. I mean, it places nicely. You know, next to the Wellington building and everything. So we're going to try and activate as we're leasing up a little bit to just show the neighborhood that these doors are open. I think that's super important. But yeah, so Vicki, I wrote down your name. I'll see if I can track down your email or get it from Vita. But yeah, I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you.
These meetings don't always go over like this though, right?
Our meetings are usually 6 to 8. Sorry, Naomi.
Oh,
I was not aware you did not know that. Our meetings are usually 6 to 8.
That's my fault. I scheduled it for 6 to 7:30. I'm sorry.
okay. Apologies. I'm going to Seattle and then I'm going to Honolulu, all via this platform. So I'm going 2 hours earlier and then another 5 hours earlier. That's why I'm doing meetings this late. But I appreciated the conversation. Actually, this meeting's helped me learn a lot more about ROC too. So
thanks, Naomi. Do you have a second to answer a question maybe about what units have been leased? Like, so have the 30% AMI units been leased? And then what do you know, like numbers in terms of 50% of AMI versus 60%, or is there like a gap there at all?
Yeah, I have a rough idea. I mean, our 30% were all 3 bedrooms, and even though they haven't all been filled, they've, how can I say, on our list, the 30% are gone. If those applicants all move forward, right? So our 3 bedrooms for the 30% are gone. Our studios have been taken, so of our 3 bedrooms. So we're down to 1 and 2 bedrooms at mostly 60% AMI. And I should have mentioned, of the 21 households that moved in, several of them, most of them are families with kids under 16.
Thank you for that.
That's going to be fun having them in the building.
Naomi, I communicate frequently with your neighbor to the east across the street, Betty Gaddy, who lives on the corner there. I got to know her husband during construction, and he passed away, and I now respond to her sewer calls on the weekend. She called me last week and she said that she befriended one of the people that were working on the art installations on the exterior of your building, and that she really wanted to make sure that I passed along to ArtSpace that you guys have really great workers working on site.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'll make sure Becky knows that too. Becky Carlson St. Clair, but that's great. Okay.
Have a good trip.
Well, yeah, it's all via the Zoom.
Thanks for the update, Naomi.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for the update, Naomi.
Okay. Do we need to continue this discussion, or have we reached a point of, we've pretty much said most of what needs to be said? We are essentially a CAC. We don't provide minutes to anyone unless they let me know that they want to be on the ROC email list. I have a ROC, how David, you send the stuff out. How many? 70, 80, 90?
Yeah, it's like 100. I mean, I get a bunch of bounce backs too. I don't know.
Yeah, I do too. It's hard to know who's who and where, but that's how we've operated for 22 years. I would be loath, I really would be loath to try and have this committee, which is free flowing, free speech, free whatever you want to call it, free decision-making until a vote is taken, and then we try and abide by the vote. I would hate after 22 years to have that change and have bridles and put on us and make us fit into somebody's perception of what we should be instead of what we have become over 22 years.
One of the, in defense of all of the conversation about the benefits of Harrison neighborhood, speaking from the business community, the reason the business community was so adamant about participating is that we did not feel that the Harrison neighborhood had our side of the issue. And to start with, and because of the ROC, I like Vicky's conversation about a confederacy. I think that's what it is. It brought the business community into the fold, so to speak, who felt that there was a place to participate. And I can tell you, because on the other side, I was working on some of the landscaping along Glenwood area, despite the fact that we were arguing about the place the business community had in helping to develop Harrison neighborhood. Watching this evolve over the years, and for all of those from Harrison neighborhood, you go back to the community benefits arguments and everything else. That was for areas south of the creek. So the conversation is it is an imperfect system, and it is that what this does, it is a round table to bring a lot of voices to the table. Hopefully that then is going to go back to the individual community, but it does help present many voices, not focused directly on one or the other entity. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind is the business community, I no longer am here, so I'm out of, I really probably shouldn't be speaking, but I'd like the historical fact is the voices, even though there may not be somebody to go back to sometimes, the voices are voices that helped us reach consensus that was trying to look at the benefits to all of the entities that are participating. It's not perfect, but to hear Harrison neighborhood want to pull away from it, I think is a big mistake. And I would hope that that can be brought back, some ways to bring it back into the system. There is no perfect system. And looking at my age, I've watched a lot of this. Bassett Creek Valley ROC has been since I came back to Minnesota 52 years ago, and all the involvement I've had is the best of all of the entities I've been involved in. So I want to really encourage the leadership of the various communities to think about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Try to figure out a way to bring in and help reconstruct it to keep this blend.
If there are no more comments, I think maybe, David, we should pull the plug. Colleen, you look as though you want to say something. No.
No, it's interesting because we've had this conversation. I still feel relatively new to ROC, and I'm still learning the history. And I know, I feel like I understand my role as representing Bryn Mawr. I don't know if we're going to reach any sort of decision in this meeting, but I certainly think we need to continue the conversation. It's going to be really important. I don't know what the best way to do that is, whether we have sort of a separate meeting about it or not, but I certainly don't want to see H&A leave either.
I'd like to follow up on Jim's comment. ROC is a very big group, and which group shows up at a given meeting will change the tenor of the meeting. And so, Jim, it's not unusual to come to two different ROC meetings, you'll get two different answers to the same question. And our decision-making process can be very, very messy. And at times, when it's contentious, it takes us a long time to work out the pros and cons. And one of the benefits of having membership from Bryn Mawr and Harrison and the business community is you bring a lot of different perspectives to a given issue. And so as a Bryn Mawr representative, I really appreciate what the Harrison reps say, and it gives me new insights and new perspectives on some of the issues. And so I really, really hope that they will continue to participate. And those of us who've been around for 10 years have come to accept that at times our decision-making process gets protracted and it gets messy. But at the end of the day, we all stay respectful of each other, and we end the meetings as friends, and we'll come back next month as friends, and we'll talk about whatever we need to talk about at the next meeting. And that's my 2 cents worth.
And I would like to say to like Nicole and to Mackenzie and any of the other Harrison people that are listening in, so much of the last several years really has focused on development north of the creek. I would be more than happy to sit down with a group of people, or mostly I operate on Zoom or phone at this point, so that we can really review how Harrison has benefited by being in ROC, so that perhaps you can see some balance in terms of your current frustrations and also the benefits, because none of the individual communities has gotten 100% benefit. Everybody has given a little and everybody has profited a little. And I can understand, I very much do understand at this point some of your frustrations, knowing what the housing priority and the gentrification concerns have been over the last several years. But again, the participation of Harrison has been important throughout the history. In fact, I would say that without Harrison, we would not have come together in the first place, particularly because we started organizing around tow trucks, which is totally way in the past. But there are benefits in there in the past, and there will be benefits going forward. So again, I'm just saying to particularly Nicole and Mackenzie, who have been very articulate about your frustrations, I'm willing to sit down and meet with you.
And I don't want to forget a key, Van White Boulevard. Van White Boulevard is what it is today, is an outcome of what ROC has worked on in the initial. So I think that's an important thing. We didn't get the things we wanted. It went down Fremont instead of Girard because move it for this and that reason. We haven't gotten the 2 bridges, but we did get basically the idea that there should be 2 bridges. So there are a lot of things that benefit would not have happened without ROC.
And again, even talking about the Van White Boulevard from its very inception, we were told, no, that isn't going to happen because scrap metal processors is right where you want the bridge to go. And yeah, it took years and years and years, but scrap metal processors decided to move. And because once they moved, then we could move forward on the idea, which for many decades was called the North-South Connector, to which the people from Harrison, wherever we went, we almost had t-shirts that said, we can't get there from here, which had all sorts of context to it. So I really hope that you'll step back from your current frustrations and look at the entire history and how Harrison has benefited from basically getting the support of Bryn Mawr and the business community and a variety of city council people.
Yeah, this is Jerry. I wanted to echo something that Chuck had said earlier. I'm no longer on the committee, but was 18 years worth, I guess, until I sold our house in Bryn Mawr. And I like to think of the valley as being a whole series of Gordian knots. That if one thing begets another, with the bridge, with Ryan in its interest in moving forward with development, trying to solve the banana, trying to address the issue of train storage potentially in the eastern end of the place. And I would guess in the first 10 years, 90% of the energy was spent on things south of the creek. And I have no idea how many years we spent on the on the impound lot, and heated conversations with members of the city council and others who were adamant about not getting it fixed or addressed. And it's finally come to fruition to something that is so much better and is solving a lot of problems that seemed not even possible, certainly 20 years ago. So the banana will be back, I would guess, at some point, and that's going to be another Gordian knot that's retied itself. That's going to take a lot of effort, I would guess, to sort out. And it needs, I think, a lot of voices at the table.
And one of the things Jerry said, I think is really crucial, is there is a master plan because of efforts done by members of the ROC to bring in developers. We interviewed, I think, 5 different or 6 different developers, actually had them in to a conversation, and Ryan decided they would come in, and somebody knows these numbers better than I do, but they spent well over $1 million and probably much more than that, plus gave their corporate time by their project manager to participate with ROC to develop the plan and have all the meetings that were the meetings at IMS and everything, the public meetings. So that came as a ROC entity in which Harrison neighborhood participated, Bryn Mawr participated, the business community participated. And we were able to hire. The nice thing is the city participated because we were able to get monies to hire Bill Smith, I think, Beco, a couple other people to be facilitators. The ROC had no money for that.
ROC still has no money.
Yeah.
I want to mention one benefit to Harrison of being on ROC. Harrison brought to the ROC's attention that the Excel lab building was going to become a charter school. And it was only through the efforts of the Bryn Mawr membership of ROC that got voted down. And now we have a multi-tenant building there instead. So I don't think without Bryn Mawr's support or opposition to that charter school, that charter school would have been killed. So that's one benefit to Harrison of being part of ROC.
Nicole, have you been beaten enough?
What was that, Vita?
I said, have you been beaten enough?
Oh, no, yeah, I've been listening and taking all of this in. So thank you for that. I wouldn't call it beaten, but.
Well, I think we can call this quits.
Except I want to disagree with Beaton, because I think, Nicole, what people are trying to express to you is how much the ROC as a group values Harrison's participation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also because it was something both Nicole and Mackenzie mentioned, trying to get ROC into some kind of a formal, I don't know what you call it, organizational structure. We've never been that. 22 years we've never been that, and it's like I don't know what, but it just doesn't feel right for ROC to suddenly have that kind of structure. We have been very successful being open-ended and whatever. It is 8:21. David, I think we should call it quits for today. You guys can let me know if you want to continue this discussion at another ROC meeting, but I think we need to digest what we've heard today and decide how we want to move forward with it. Jim, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And I guess I'll
So
just,
when's the next meeting? Just curious.
Generally, it's the third Tuesday of a month. But if there's only one item on the agenda, I will cancel the meeting and pull that item forward to the subsequent month. But it's the third Tuesday of each month. Beth, long life and enjoy.
good luck.
Thank you very much, Beth, for your motion.
Thank you, Beth.
All righty.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks,
Jen,
Beth.
more from me?
Thank you.
Yep.
We're all good. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
bye.
See ya.